there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your Friday afternoon encouragement, where we bring you individuals that are subject matter experts surrounding understanding yourself and improving both yourself personally and your leadership skills. Yes, you are at Litvak Leadership Live. We've taken about the last month off because I published my book, and you can get the book, Proverbs for Leadership, is now available on Amazon. And if you are watching this today, I have some inside information for you. If you can get the Kindle version right now, but at the beginning of next week, the print version will be available. Everything has been uploaded, and we are just waiting for Amazon to say, yes, go with the print version. So get the Kindle version so you can carry it around in your pocket on your phone. It's a beautiful thing. You can also sign up for the Proverbs for Leadership community at proverbsforleadership.com. You provide your name, your email address, and your cell phone. I'll send you out a weekly encouraging email and the occasional text. I'm very excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Ben Gay III. He is a prolific author, an incredible sales trainer. So without any further ado, let me bring out my brand new friend. Thank you, Randy Chafee, for introducing me. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Gay III. Ben, how are you today?
I'm fine, Sean. Thank you so much for having me on. And thanks to Randy, when he watches this, for bringing the two of us together. He's a great guy and has become a very good friend.
And there he is right now checking us out on Facebook. And we've also got Mark Gassert here watching us over on YouTube. Our live stream is available on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So I'm sure we'll be seeing people from all of the social media platforms. Ben, it is, as I said to you in the green room, I feel like I'm talking to a legend, and your response was a legend in your own time. I said a living legend, and you said that people have said, or your wife has said to you, a legend in your own time.
Mind
in your own mind. Okay. So, one of the things that I think is really interesting, I was reading a biography of you before we get into our topic today, and I see that you knew both Zig Ziglar and Napoleon Hill at the same time. Did the three of you ever sit down for coffee?
You know, the truth is, I don't know. I was president of a company that was the company at the time, largest MLM direct sales company, Holiday Magic Cosmetics. And everybody I've had famous people say, I really enjoyed that night at your house. And I have to stare at them intently, trying to think, when were they at the house? Because everybody was swirling around all the time. I don't think Dr. Hill and Zig ever came face to face. But I was working with him at the same time. Zig and I joined the same company on the same day. He was 18 years older than I was. He was in the Navy the day I was born. And, but we joined this company and went into friendly competition. And I became president of the company because it was the mystery prize in a year-long sales contest where I beat Zig. Looking back, I think he won. He got a Rolls Royce free and clear, and I got 5+ years of headaches. I used to kid with Zig. I said, here's the deal. Bring me the keys to the Rolls, and I'll give you the keys to the front door. And he said, no, you won that fair and square.
I am keeping the Rolls Royce. That is amazing. All the images that I have of Zig Ziglar, and I saw him speak a couple times back in the day when there used to, when there used to be these giant speaking events local, and they would tour together, and just watching him run around the stage full of gray hair and then go down on one knee as he was speaking. It was just incredible. You couldn't help but feel incredibly motivated and ready to take on the world when you were done listening to him.
Absolutely. I made a deal with Zig early on because he was older and more experienced in speaking. I had no experience, but I quickly saw the advantage he had in that area. So I asked him, I said, I'd like to attend your seminars, and here's the deal, because I'd seen him lugging that water pump into meetings. And back then it wasn't the aluminum spiffed up chrome one. It was an
Right.
honest to goodness cast iron water pump from somebody's farm. And it must have weighed 50, 60 pounds. So I said, here's the deal. I get to sit in the front row, take notes, and have dinner or lunch with you. In exchange, I will carry the pump into the room. You won't have to be seen doing that, and I'll set it up for you. And he said, deal.
There
So
you
I
go.
carried that pump into, I'm guessing, 50 or 60 meetings.
That is just incredible. So today we are going to be talking about our topic, questions answered with blank stares and silence. This is episode 178 of Litvak Leadership Live. So this topic is near and dear to my heart because I know I've had this experience, and I'm sure you've had it, Ben. I'm sure many of our viewers have had it. Frankly, if you've ever been talking in a group and you ask a question, especially if you're leading the group, and you are met with blank stares and silence, not the answer you are looking for. So the first thing I want to ask you, Ben, is this scripture, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5, counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw out of it. What does that scripture say to you about questions answered with blank stares and silence?
Well, I'm not a biblical scholar, and but what I get from it is a lesson in leadership. You have to learn how to draw people out. And one of the ways I do that is I set the stage ahead of time. I don't leave it to chance. I explain the rules of the game. Here's how we operate, whether it's in a meeting or a sales presentation. I teach a thing called sales infiltration. And not if I'm selling somebody a book on the phone, but for a serious sale, $50,000, $60,000, a series of seminars or something. I set the stage. Okay, here's the deal. I will treat you fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules. Fair enough? And they'll say, fair enough. They always do. I'll be straight with you. You be straight with me. Fair enough? Fair enough. And then you can ask me any question you want, and I'll give you an honest answer. Fair enough. And I can ask you any question. Yes, fair enough. All the problems in selling just went away. You can't lie to me
Absolutely.
now. Yeah, because we've
Well,
all agreed.
you're creating communication and
Right.
relationship at the same time.
I call that setting the table, and I think that's what Proverbs 25 is trying to establish, in that uh, I have to draw things out of you. I have to make you feel welcome and safe. I coined a phrase years ago that people buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe.
Absolutely.
In our woke society, I'm not talking about a safe place to go cuddle up in a ball, but you and I can talk, and there's nothing off limits. And I expect you to contribute. And you expect me to contribute. It's a fair exchange of ideas, but both parties have to feel that it's okay to do that. Years ago in the 50s, out of IBM came a little thing called brainstorming, which was not unlike masterminds of Dr. Hill. But in brainstorming, you could say anything. And the only rule really was, no one criticizes it. They might ask questions to clarify, but no one criticized it. So Tom Watson said at IBM, it was one of the greatest things they ever did, because they got the very best out of their people, because the people weren't sitting there thinking, well, I better not say anything, I'll look stupid. In
Well,
brainstorming,
and that
stupid was
brings
fine.
me to this. I would rather get negative feedback. I don't like negative feedback, but I would rather get
Yeah, I
negative
don't either.
feedback than getting blank stares and silence. What do you think of that?
Well, I absolutely agree. And I don't do questions and answers in most seminars. And except I'll sometimes say, write it down and pass it in. That takes the stigma off of the exercise, and also allows me to edit. I don't necessarily read everything that was given to me, but it opens it up to a free exchange of ideas. And that is absolutely crucial, or else why are we having the meeting?
Yeah. So when you find yourself in a group situation, whether you're leading a conversation or whether it is one of those brainstorming sessions, how do you inspire people to speak? How do you inspire discussion during meetings if people are hesitant because they're afraid that they're going to look stupid?
Positive reinforcement. The first person who says or does anything, unless it's just incredibly stupid, and I can't even think of an example of that, but I lavish them with praise for doing it. And I'm lavishing them with praise, but not for them, for the 50 or 100 or 500 people who are watching, because they get to think, oh, you mean he didn't laugh at me or make a fool of me? He praised me. Hands start shooting up. Let me talk.
So
Let me share you my idea.
So, what if, have you ever run into this situation where that person who is the first one to speak is actually not an extrovert, but an introvert? Because introverts don't like lavish praise or public praise. Have you ever run into a situation where when you praise someone like that, it backfires because you really didn't know them and they would have rather been praised privately? I'm not trying to put you in a gotcha moment. I'm just curious if you've run into that.
Never.
Okay.
I've given 5,000 paid appearances over the past 45, 50 years. Probably that many free ones in prisons and schools and churches and so on. And I've never experienced anything bad or negative from praising someone. To be honest with you, Sean, that's the first time I've even heard something like that. There's a great book people ought to get a hold of. I assume it's still in print, called Don't Shoot the Dog by Dr. Karen Pryor. And it's a book about, sounds odd, but it's a book about animal training. Have you ever been to one of those water shows where the porpoise
Yeah.
jumps in the air 40 feet over the bar and then swims over to get his tuna? That started out with a bar on the floor of the pool, and the porpoise swam over it. Whistle blew, he came up, got a tuna. Then they raised the bar, then they raised the bar, then it was out of the water, then it was 40 feet in the air. The porpoise, operating on positive reinforcement, was trained to jump over the bar and expect praise and so on. Proper positive reinforcement, you turn those people into the porpoises. They look for the praise. They love the praise. Now, you talk about praise in private. That's where criticism should be, is
Right.
in private. Praise in
Absolutely.
public, criticize in private. Dr. Hill it wasn't a rule. He never said it out loud. I just watched it happen. He never criticized me or even seriously questioned any idea I had in front of a group. He spent most of his time with me, either up at the house or in my office, which was really a boardroom. And he would sit there, not say a word for hours. And when they got up and left, he stayed. He had the Dr. Hill chair at the end. They got up and left. When the door clicked, with my peripheral vision, I looked to see if his head would popped up. If it popped up, he was now going to tell me what he hadn't told me while the room was full of other people.
So, and
Then he would say, well, that was a great idea, Ben, but you didn't express it very well, or whatever. Never in front of another human being.
Well, and I've been on the receiving end of that where years ago, because that used to be a management technique where you would be corrected in front of your peers. And some leaders at the time saw that as an opportunity to teach everyone based on one person's error. What do you think has happened over time that we have gotten away from that?
I don't know, but done like most people do it, I'm glad they got away from it because it's stifled. I come up with an idea and you tear me down in front of 10 people. How many more ideas are you going to get out of me today?
Oh,
None.
yeah.
How many are you going to get out of the other 10? Few, if any. No one wants to be dissected in front of a group. So one thing is I make notes. I have my ever-present memo pads and legal pads that Dr. Hill made. I always had to have one within arm's reach and a pen to write with it, write on it with, because ideas are fleeting.
Yes.
I take notes during meetings. And if you said something incredibly stupid, I don't think you would, Sean, but let's say you did.
Let's
Uh,
say I did.
yeah, at noon, at 1 o'clock as the meeting's winding down, I say, let me run through some things that sort of crossed my mind. And I might gently, not calling you by name, just off my notepad, off the ideas, twist and tweak whatever idea or subject matter it was a little bit. And, next time we'll talk more about that. And so that you are not embarrassed. I want meetings to be fun, and I use a lot of humor in meetings. So therefore, I can give you some help and guidance. But if it's done humorously and lovingly, you won't even know that it was a substitute for, Sean, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. I don't even know how you got in this room. And I've been to some of those meetings.
And there's
Yeah.
people out there like that who lead like that. I'll be honest. I end up when I'm in a meeting and a question is asked, I'm one of those guys that will leap to answer it. And I have had to learn, thank God for my wife, to moderate myself. Everyone who watches Litvak Leadership Live has heard me talk about the word moderation, that I don't overtake a meeting or put myself into it too much to overwhelm other people. My question to you, Ben, is as the leader of a meeting, as the leader of a group, how do you get people to shush and get other people to speak when there's always going to be people that are ready, capable, and able to speak, but others have just as good of ideas, but they'll just sit there because they're not as outgoing to give those ideas?
I would say to that person, if it's already the sin is being committed, Bob, that's really interesting. John, what do you think about that? And I just deflect it and we go on to somebody else. And then you take Bob, if that was the name I used, you take Bob aside after this meeting and explain how he's to behave in the next meeting and all other meetings. I have that tendency of fire, ready, aim. That's me. I've
Yeah,
said things to people that when they heard it for the first time, I was hearing it for the first time. No filtering device. Just,
sure.
here's an opportunity to fill in with words, and then find out what I said by listening carefully. So I've tried to moderate. It's easier said than done, but I try and use the old count to 10 uh, theory. I may not get all the way to 10, but think about what you're about to say. There's another advantage to that, by the way. It makes you look wise. Oh, he's contemplating. What I'm really doing is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just to make it's like I understand in conversations how that can go awry, but I don't understand stupid emails and things like that. You had time to type it, to proof it, and then you have
Yes.
a send button you don't have to hit. So in on through the internet, that should be a former problem. Unfortunately, it's not. But it's easier to edit yourself there with time than in a meeting. So in a meeting, give yourself time. They'll all
Well,
still be there.
I
If somebody
never
jumps
send an
in,
email when I'm fired up. I
yeah,
may write it out and then I walk away from it or I save it into the draft folder until I've gone from here to here. Because you send that email when you're here, you may have a great point, and then you read it here and you go, I maybe shouldn't phrase it that way.
24 hours later, I've written things, and I basically, if there's any controversy or emotion involved, I basically have a 24-hour rule. And frequently when I get back to something after 24 hours, I think, who is the idiot that wrote that? I go, oh, it was me. Yeah. So
So
timing and patience.
when you have a team and they are inevitably very different people, they may not even necessarily have common interests. What are strategies that you have employed in the past, or strategies that you would suggest to people now in the times in which we live to create connections between teammates other than we have a job to do?
I was whining, there's no better word for it, one day to Dr. Hill early in our relationship about, I think somebody had come in, the legal department had come in to complain about the advertising department, and then they left, and the production department came in and said, they're asking me to do things that can't be done, and so on. And after 2 or 3 of those, which went on rather frequently, I said, they're driving me crazy, Dr. Hill. And these are the 10, 12 people that sat around my conference table a few times a week. But broken up, they backbit, if that's the right word, backbit each other. And so
backbiting,
yeah. I said, they're driving me crazy. And he said, well, you haven't made them into a team, I wouldn't think, in a true mastermind group. And I said, well, I guess not. And he said, have they been up to the house? We had a big, beautiful home overlooking San Francisco Bay and the bridges and everything. It was really quite inspiring. And where he stayed when he was in town. And have you had them up to the house? I said, no. He said, why don't you do that? Have a pool tournament and, open bar and so on. And let's turn them into friends.
Okay.
So I did. And many times, but that was the first time, literally. A couple of them had been up because I liked them. It had nothing to do with work. That's just how I happened to know them. But the whole group had never been together in one room except to fight at my conference table. And so they came up, they had a lovely time. And the next morning we had a standard meeting in my office.
All right.
It was an entirely different group of people. They'd had a few drinks
they enjoyed
together.
Each other's company.
Yeah, they pool with each other. And now the legal department's job was to keep us on the straight and narrow and not get us sued and so on, or have a problem with an attorney general somewhere. But it was, may I make a suggestion instead of, I'm talking to 8, 9, 10 friends. May I make a suggestion? The production department, instead of saying no, was suddenly saying, let me look into that and see if I can pull it off. It'll be difficult, but give me a chance. And the advertising department saying, here's what I want to say, Dorothy, to our attorney, Dorothy von Berldingen. Dorothy, would you take a look at this? I made a copy for you and tell me if I need to straighten it up a little bit, instead of waiting for Dorothy to attack and then to attack back. So I turned them into a friend. One of Dr. Hill's theories with the mastermind group is when 2 or more people are gathered together, a third person develops. So, and I've modified that over the years. When a salesperson meets a customer, there's team A, the salesperson, he's a liar, cheat, and thief. Team B, the customer, who knows you're a liar, cheat, and thief, and therefore it's okay to lie back to you and protect their money. Your job is to immediately form team C, which is owned 50% by each side, former side, and they are working together to solve a common problem. And team C, on team C, I may be the resident expert about the product or service we're talking about. They're the resident expert on what they really want and need, because all a customer is ever saying is, what's in it for me? If I do this, what's in it for me? Do I advance or fall back? I mean, it's really pretty simple concept. So building a team rather than having another meeting to solve an imaginary problem wasn't nearly as important as building a team. and then humor and openness and very little criticism. The criticism, if any, was usually masked as a sincere question. That sounds like a great idea, but I don't understand this. And this is the problem with their idea in your mind, but it gives them a graceful way to do it. We created, I hate to use the woke terminology, but we created a safe place to have good ideas.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with using the woke terminology. You're not advocating for wokeness, I assume. So
Yeah,
you're
as best I understand it, no.
Right. You're advocating for interaction between people to be able to think of others, which you said something, and I want to bring it up because as salespeople, our goal from a business standpoint is to close the deal, bring in the revenue, support our company, make commission. And Larry Levine, in his book Selling from the Heart, talks about that, but he also talks about that you need to sell with integrity. You need to not be an empty suit. You need to go and become a resource. Bryn Tillman talks about all the time on LinkedIn. Go from pitching to being a resource. And I know when I personally meet with people for the company that I work for, and I talk to companies about the services we provide, I truly walk in there. Yes, I want to provide the services to them, but I only want to provide those services if those services are the right solution for them. I would rather have someone tell me no than string me along the entire time. How do you suggest that people make that transition in sales, in operations, in any kind of meeting, from being focused on their own self-interest to focusing on the interest of the person that they are talking to, putting their needs ahead of their own? Because I have found when you do that, your needs will be met. And I'm curious how you would introduce that idea to people.
Well, I have an 86% closing rate on major sales over the last 40, 50 years. And one of the reasons is I cheat, and I tell people that I do. Here's how I cheat. I sell and represent only quality products and services that are competitively priced, and I spend my day talking to qualified people, which brings us to the no thing. I would rather hear a quick no, that I've misjudged who I'm talking to and they're not qualified, than talk about it all day long and get a no at the end. I use an example. When I used to do sales training for British Motors in San Francisco, they sell Bentleys, or did, I don't know what they're doing now, but Bentleys, Rolls Royces, etc. When somebody comes into the dealership, I would train them, hand them your card, shake hands, look them dead in the eye and say, my name's Ben Gay, whatever. Mr. Zawiski, it is a pleasure to meet you. One of the joys of this job is to meet people who've been successful enough to be able to invest $350,000 in a Rolls Royce. It's just an honor, and I hope we get to be friends so we can talk. And the reason I said that is I'm looking at their eyes. If the
You're qualified.
yeah, if the eyes dilate or they throw up in the back of their throat, they don't have $350,000 to invest in Rolls. They probably, their wife is shopping and they just want to come in and look or whatever. So I qualify them, not prejudge, but I qualify people, hopefully before we even meet, certainly after we meet. And then the second part of the secret is I've become, and I'm not bragging, but I'll just speak out loud like we're buddies and no one's listening. I've become a person of class, quality, and substance with the ability to tastefully project that. And then I set the table as we talked about earlier. I'll treat you fairly, squarely, decently by the rules. So now, instead of a sales confrontation nightmare situation, we're two friends seeing and confirming that we have a problem. Team C has a problem. We've established that I can ask you anything. One of my favorite catchphrases is, well, I have to check with my brother-in-law who's an accountant in Milwaukee before I make a decision. If you set the table right, that gives you permission to say, no, Bob, we agreed we wouldn't do that. And then with a big smile, I say, you don't have a brother-in-law. He doesn't live in Milwaukee. He's not an accountant. You promised not to use a story like that to delay the sale. And they laugh and I laugh, and it's behind us. So if you don't want the product or service, if you need some more questions answered, by all means, say so. People have said to me, Ben, you could sell snow to an Eskimo. And I said, I probably could, but I wouldn't. That's the secret. I could, but I don't.
Right.
And if I discover in the middle of a sales presentation that you don't need what I'm selling, it's over. Because here's what I really want from you, Sean. Over the coming years, I want to become your go-to guy. I get calls I've had several this morning. I get calls from people who know that I don't do what they're asking about, but they also know that I have a magic Rolodex about a foot deep, an old-fashioned Rolodex with cards in it.
Oh, wow. With the metal cover?
This one doesn't, but it did at one time years ago.
Okay.
It's not there anymore. But I had a guy call me a few years ago, and he wanted to know Ross Perot's phone number. And I said, I don't know my phone number. So how am I supposed to know Ross Perot's? And he said, Ben, you can get Ross Perot's phone number. I said, all right, I'll call you back in a few minutes. Well, I called a person who I knew him and had done some work with him years ago, who put me to a second person who I knew and trusted. I just didn't know he had a connection with Ross. And within 5 minutes, 6 minutes, I had Ross's phone number in his pocket, the phone number of his secretary, and a phone number that only good friends know and call. All 3 phone numbers. So I'm the guy who knew that, and therefore it gives me first look at things. I'm free to say to him, what are you calling Ross Perot for? Well, we're putting together this deal. Well, can I have a piece of that? Can I invest in that or whatever? It gives you first look at a lot of things.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, becoming the go-to guy who is known, liked, trusted, and with whom they feel safe is miraculous, what it does for you. I sold, to say this happens all the time, so if someone's hearing this story for the second time, I'm not exaggerating. I'm just saying it goes on constantly. I sold a guy the other day, we did a deal, who I first sold in Atlanta 60 years ago.
Wow.
And we've done business numerous times in different companies, different situations over the years, but 60 years, and he called, I haven't seen him in 40 years physically, but he called up, Ben, this is so-and-so, how you doing? Pretty good. Listen, I'm da-da-da-da. And I said, yeah, I have a good connection there. Full disclosure, if you buy from them, I'll get a little kickback of some sort. Fine. I assumed you would. Gave him the information, and they struck a deal, and I got a referral fee. And that's but you don't have friends and business associates of 60 years if you don't treat them fairly, squarely, decently by the rules. And when you make a mistake, I've made several over the years. When you make a mistake, come clean. I really believe that when I told you that. I sold the first Pong games. You remember Pong?
Yeah, I remember Pong. We had a Pong player.
Yeah, okay. I sold the very first of those machines as an investment. You buy them, we'll locate them in pizza parlors and so on. To a gentleman. I sold 20 or 25 of them, and they weren't cheap. And we placed them just like we were supposed to. One was in a pizza parlor near my house. And so collection day came. He said, his collection day, he said, would you go with me? I'm going to open up the box on the first machine for the first time. I said, sure. When you were trying to prime the pump with those machines, we tell the manager, take some nail polish and put it across the quarter. Then when we get it out of the box, we'll give you those back because we're splitting the other revenue.
Right.
We opened the box after it'd been in this pizza parlor for a full week at least. There was one quarter in the box and it had a red streak across it. He's looking at his I'm quoting from memory, $2,500 machine, and it's generated 25 cents, which he couldn't keep in a week. And he's got 25 of these machines spread out. So I said to him, I was capable of doing it if I had to. I want you to go check all your other machines. If you're disappointed, I will arrange to get you all of your money back. This is not what I expected to find.
Right.
He did the other machines. It was perfectly adequate, especially considering the fact that people didn't know about Pong yet. They were still playing the pinball machine over in the corner. So we had some education to do. We figured that out. And he said, nope, I'm keeping them, and bought another 20 or 25 machines. But I was prepared to step into the breach with what I feared was a horrible mistake. When he knew I would do that for him, we're friends to this day. No one's
Well,
playing
you had
Pong.
integrity, and he knew it.
Yep. Yep.
He
living
knew
proof.
it. And Eric played Pong too, apparently. I think we all played Pong. So, Ben, we have gone almost 40 minutes at this point. It has been a total pleasure to have you on. I'm going to give you the last word. And I know you opened with that you are not a faith person or a Bible guy, but I'm going to give you another Bible verse, and I want you to relate it to our topic, questions answered with blank stares and silence. And it's from Proverbs, the book of wisdom. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the heart. How do you think this sentence, this verse, applies to the topic we've been talking about today?
I'm going to struggle a bit. Our viewers will now know that you haven't given me questions and answers to the show.
I
and
have
so
not.
On. Yeah. What I've found is just openness and honesty with you, the person you're talking to, the situation you're in. I was asked one day in Las Vegas not too long ago. I don't like questions like this from the audience. It's among the reasons I don't ask for them. They said, Mr. Gray, tell me the 3 or 4 most important things Dr. Hill taught you. And I'm thinking, given time, I could tell them 500 things he taught me.
Right.
3 spontaneously right now. I sort of looked up at the heavens, and I am a spiritual person, by the way. I'm just not a biblical scholar.
All right.
With anything, I don't memorize like that. But I looked up into the heavens and quietly said to myself, Jesus, I need a little help here. I got to come up with 4 things. And you and I were talking about this earlier, my unfilteredness. I heard myself say to that lady at the same time she heard it, I heard it. Integrity in all things. Focus and take action. I had focus problems. I still do to a degree. I'm the shiny object crow. Something's happening, my head spins, and Dr. Hill will be sitting and he said, focus, Ben, focus. Don't get distracted by what's going on out there in your secretary's office. Focus. Take action. He caught me what he called dithering one time over a decision. He said, Ben, you're dithering. Take action. And integrity, of course, my parents taught me that and so on. But with Dr. Hill, it was like a food group. It was an entirely separate subject. So if you have that established, as I said earlier, in setting up a sale and sales infiltration, you can do anything, including saying, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you. I used to have.
And there's nothing wrong with that answer.
People right. I had an answer for everything. You could ask me the square root of the universe and I'd have an answer for you. Wouldn't be right, but I'd have an answer. I've now gotten very comfortable with, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. If there is an answer, I'll find it for you. Dr. Hill told me one day when I had answered something that I think he sensed I didn't really know. He said, Ben, you and I together cumulatively don't know 99.9999999% of the facts available. So there's no shame in saying, I don't know. You don't know much about anything. That's how come we're humans.
Exactly.
So look at them, stare at them, let them feel your empathy for them, and let them feel your sincerity. And then you don't have to have an answer for everything.
You don't. You're absolutely right. Ben, thank you. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Litvak Leadership Live, where we've talked about questions answered with blank stares and silence. Everyone out there, Ben Gay III, his most recent book, it's a book series called The Closers. It's available there on eBay where I have it. He's got the book in his hand. Oh, wait, I got an alarm going off. Okay. Go to eBay, get the first book. You get that first book, you're going to end up getting all of them. It is a great book for sales. It's a great book for business. Frankly, it's a great book for life. And if you want to contact Ben, there's his email address. He will get back to you. Ben, again, living legend, Ben Gay III. Thank you so much. It just amazes me that you hung out with Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar. The book Think and Grow Rich. If y'all haven't read it, read it. Read it slowly. It's very, very deep, but it will change your life. That's all for now. We'll be back next week with another guest. Thank you again, Ben.
Thank you, Sean.